Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, one of my favorite creators, one of my favorite people returning to the show to talk about a book that's about to come out, a new series that he's releasing through Mad Cave. Plus, we're going to talk about a series that just recently ended, but the trade is coming out soon. My pleasure to welcome Zack Kaplan back to the show. Zack, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jace. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's always great to see you, man. Like I said, Dark Empty Void coming out this week, this Wednesday, everybody. If you're listening to this the week it comes out, obviously. Really interesting book that you have. I mean, all your stuff's interesting, science fiction, but so much more than that. So give everybody the elevator pitch. Let them know
Yeah,
what Dark Empty
yeah,
Void's about.
yeah. Dark Empty Void is a cosmic sci-fi horror thriller adventure, and it's basically about scientists here on Earth experimenting with microscopic black holes and trying to make them stable enough to determine if they're just soul-sucking monsters or if they could possibly lead to more. And they get answers when they lose control of the black hole. All sorts of crazy stuff comes out, including, most surprisingly, a human being. And that is basically where our story launches off of bringing in our main character, who is a psychologist and is tasked with solving the mystery of this black hole to save the world.
Now, here's one of the things that I love. You know, we've talked many times about science fiction being such a great genre to explore the human condition. A lot of times these stories seem fantastical, but this whole idea of experimenting with black holes, it's not that we're not that far. Scientists are not that far away from being able to create and study black holes here on Earth in a controlled environment. What could go wrong?
Right. That seems like a good launching pad. I mean, they cloned dinosaurs on an island. There was no problem. So, black hole seems like an easy thing to mess around with without
Yeah,
repercussions.
yeah, exactly. The entire Earth swallowed by a microscopic black hole. It's not that far fetched. Also, Beyond Real, I mentioned. We'll talk about that as well. The trade coming out. And here's the thing. I just said that a lot of times your stories focus on science fiction. That's kind of the backdrop, but really it's about exploring the human condition. Both these stories do that in different ways, in very interesting ways. So uh, I want to, kind of get into that. You mentioned that the main character from Dark Empty Void is a psychologist. Give us a little insight into choosing that. There's a metaphor in the beginning of issue one, not to spoil everybody because we want you to go and pick it up, but talking about depression, which a lot of people can feel like that is, a dark, empty void. A lot of people deal with that. So talk a little bit about that, mental health, choosing a psychologist as the main character, and how that you kind of playing off that with the idea of a black hole, which can be soul sucking.
Yeah, I mean, there's several aspects here. I mean, first off, I think I'm not the first to take a the idea of science run amok and losing control of that, and then bringing in the everyman or the everywoman to have to solve that sort of situation. And there's something very kind of relatable to seeing a more ordinary character come into this crazy situation. And so that feels kind of very intrinsic and natural to the genre. But more so, I think, this is a story about how we view life. And as I pose that question, when you hear about a black hole, is it dangerous or is it a portal to something more? And that's a genuine question in science. And so that's, in a way, there might be some perspective, there might be some point of view to answering that question. And that's part of life. So I thought it was very interesting to kind of explore that theme and to start with a character that is really a total mess, even though she's a psychology lecturer at a college. She's very depressed, very on edge. Her life's a mess, and she's called because she's the estranged wife of one of the other scientists. They're going through a terrible split, but she's needed to solve this mystery. So she comes into this, and it creates a tremendous amount of tension because she seems hardly able to handle this situation, and yet she's got to come in and be brilliant and figure out this mystery. And so, just it creates some excitement, it creates some tension, She's a really strong-willed, interesting character, and I think we immediately like her, and we're kind of with her and along for the ride. And so all that creates a really compelling human story about her experience in this crazy situation.
See, that's what I love about it. Like, you're exactly right. Right away, we kind of get that she's going through this tough breakup, and she doesn't have all her stuff together, but you can't help but root for her. Um, and you're kind of on her side right away. But yeah, this is a complicated situation. We're dealing with science. It's way out on the cutting edge. It's so interesting to me the way you brought that together, the context and the contrast between it. Right? You talk about tension, like we talk about the gravity of a black hole, which causes tension, which can rip things apart. We talk about her as a psychologist, which is maybe. I mean, I studied psychology, in college as well, and it's like it's so kind of inward looking when you're learning it. You can't help but diagnose yourself. I mean, there's that whole trope about when everybody takes abnormal psych, everybody starts thinking that I have this condition, I have this condition, I have this
Sure.
condition, whatever.
Yeah.
You're so introspective, and that is very small, right? You can't really think of being much smaller. You're just within yourself. And then you can contrast that with maybe the thing out there in the universe that's the biggest and most or least understood, which is a black hole. Uh, Again, were these things that just as you came up with the idea kind of organically, hey, that's going to work? Or were they things that you had to sort of work on a massage to get that big contrast?
I mean, I think anytime I come up with any concept, it usually is about finding a topic or a subject that is related to science fiction or futurism that I find interesting, like black holes, and then just it's not work that I'm doing as much as sitting with that topic and exploring in my mind the modern correlation or the way in which we can create a story that has duality. And black holes, to me, this question of are they dangerous or not, and what happens when you get sucked into it, there was something very relatable, and we kind of used the phrase black hole to even describe some of the experiences that we go through in life, or to describe some of the emotional things that we go through. And so, yeah, it just felt like these two kind of ideas really came together in an interesting way. And then obviously the work goes into then like bridging them consistently throughout the story so that it feels unified and connected. But I think it was just an inspiring thought that I thought there's something about black holes and cynicism and depression and just how we sometimes view life and just go, is this it? Is this just, are we just like experiencing some soul-sucking thing? It also doesn't, it's probably worth mentioning that I was playing with this idea at the onset of the pandemic.
Uh,
So definitely in the midst of the pandemic going, are we stuck in a black hole? Are we in this crazy experience? And how are we supposed to view this experience and thinking about how we view life? And do we view life positively or negatively? And how do you feel positive when it seems that the whole world is collapsing in on you and you're just being sucked into a terrible situation? There's a story here. There's a story about this emotional fight related to exploring the nature of black holes.
yeah, and again, I think very relatable for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of even if you've never suffered from a clinical depression, we've all been sad. We've all felt at
Oh,
times,
yeah,
breakup or whatever it is. So you can definitely relate. But again, with this character, again, it's so funny. Joy is her name, right? Like how ironic. You name her Joy. But for her, obviously she's going through a tough time. But again, it's the fact that you made her a psychologist, so she's more aware. But it goes to show, just because you're aware and you can understand why you're feeling the way you feel, you still can't help. That's just being human, right? You're going to be sad about the breakup or what have you.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. She's a really cool character to write, and yeah, I had a lot of fun writing her, and it's a real. I mean, this is a really cool, fun, cosmic sci-fi horror. I almost say adventure because they go into the world that's kind of swirling around this black hole, like they're going into something. And so in that regard, this is a really cool adventure with a lot of twists and turns, but Joy is a really fascinating character. I think people will really quickly fall in love with her and just be, dying to see what happens.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of where the story starts. Obviously, we have Joy, we have her estranged husband Colson, um,
Yeah.
but then we have this mysterious person that came through, and that's kind of the mystery they're trying to solve. So there's a lot of layers, and you mentioned a lot of twists and turns. So is this a complex story in terms of structure and pacing? Was it a challenge to know how much to reveal, keep the mystery going, that sort of thing?
I think it's complex in crafting the mystery and the nature of the story, yeah. But I don't think it's hard to follow. I think that the setup is quite simple, actually. And I think that the general adventure is quite simple, actually, in the sense that they got a problem. This black hole is out of control, and this human being has come out, and they got to go in and not get too close and solve this mystery and survive whatever else is coming out. And in that regard, it's a very very clean, easy story to tell. But I think, and that's something that I like to do. I like to try to find a structure to a story that is as simple and clean, as timeless as we can be, and then layer on different emotional aspects or character aspects, or play with twists and turns and mysteries so that it keeps you on the edge of your seat. But yeah, I think in this that's why I think we've related the story very much to Aliens or Annihilation, in the sense that we're in this claustrophobic compound and we're trying to solve the mystery and survive.
Yeah, I got a little bit of is it called Arrival? The Eric Heiser.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I got a little.
I love Arrival
Yeah,
too. Yeah, yeah, and Arrival's a great point, because and one thing I love about Arrival is you don't know if these spaceships in Arrival have come to bring peace or to destroy Earth. And actually, it could probably go either way.
hmm
And so you don't know if this is uh, if this story is going to end positively or negatively. You don't know if this is a tragedy or not. All you know, and you don't know what's going on. You just know that there is a existential threat, and we got to handle it. So yeah, I really like that complexity when it comes to something has happened, but we don't even know the intentions of what is going on, or what is going on, and that's to be revealed.
Well, the other thing, the way it relates for me as well. You mentioned Joy as kind of this every woman. Amy Adams does a very good job. Obviously, she's a scientist and she's brilliant or whatever, but especially with the relationship with her daughter and Arrival, she's very relatable. She's very down to earth. And that's what the characterization I get from Joy as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Amy Adams is a great comparable character, but I think so too is Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so I mean she's just trying to get through the situation as well. Annihilation. So too is Natalie Portman's character, in terms of she didn't ask to solve the mystery of this crazy phenomenon. She's just brought in. The Abyss. We've just got a bunch of underwater miners who
Yeah.
are brought in to solve this mystery. So I think we come back, and Jurassic Park. They're hard. They're not supposed to be handling live dinosaurs. These are paleontologists. So yeah, I think that this is a kind of a common thing of finding the fish out of water and bringing them into this story, because the scientists are the one that messed this up. The scientists are playing God and playing with something they shouldn't be playing with. It's the other person is going to say, all right, you can tell me all the techno babble and the mumbo jumbo, but let me actually figure out what we should be doing as normal people here. And I just think it's very relatable, and it's very engaging, and it's a really fun way to explore sci-fi horror.
Yeah, and Joy has a real take charge moment when you read it, everybody. You'll know what I'm talking about. So as messy as she is, she's clearly competent. When they bring her in to solve the mystery, the first thing she does is yeah, very, very assertive. And it's kind of like, yeah, she might be a mess, but she knows her shit too. So that's kind of cool. I want to talk a little bit about the visuals as well. So you can talk
Yeah.
about who the artist is on the series, and you know, how he got involved. But the other thing, I want to talk about the pacing as well when you're done with that, because the pacing speeds up as the story goes along, but also not just your narrative, but also visually, it kind of speeds up, if you will. And I found that to be fantastic. So.
Oh yeah, co-created with Chris Sheehan, an amazing artist who's done Autumnal, Specs, House of Slaughter, and then Francisco Segala is our incredible colorist, and Justin Burchett and World is our letterer, and then we have a B cover from Christian Ward. And yeah, as far as the interior arts go, Chris Sheehan, I've been wanting to work with Chris for a very long time. Absolutely stunning artist, really fantastic at kind of bringing grit and edge and claustrophobia to this very contained sci-fi adventure. And this is, you know, this is part horror and part adventure, so it needs to feel grand in scale, but also contained in the fear. And then obviously very complex character story. And Chris is balancing all of this really beautifully. And then Francisco is just bringing a really subtle but powerful kind of color palette to it. And yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, really moody, and I think it'll really pull readers in.
So did you talk at all to Chris about kind of ramping up the visual pacing, or do you think that was just a product of him kind of reading the script, and the pacing kind of increases, speeds up, and he just kind of fed off that, or was it something you guys actually talked about?
A little of both. I mean, I think that obviously I'm writing paneling in the script, and so I'm obviously trying to create a more increased pacing as we get to the end. I mean, something that's really going on here is we're opening with a sequence that sets up the danger and the fear here, and then we actually spend a good chunk of the beginning story meeting Joy and understanding what she's going through and connecting to her, which I think is really pivotal to this story. And then as we find ourselves speeding towards the end, yeah, the intensity of what we're facing picks up. And I think that part comes through my scripting, and then in part, I think Chris is picking up on that and you know, processing that and artistically as he wants to. So yeah, I think it's a combination, you know, at like any good collaboration here is, and we communicated back and forth for sure as we made this book, but I think it was more focused on kind of the mood that we wanted to bring to it and the tone to make sure that we're bringing that the right energy.
Yeah, this might be, I mean, I've read everything you've done. Put me on the spot here. I think this might be, I'm putting myself on the spot, I should say. I think this might be my favorite, like, last page of an issue that you've done that's, you know, that's not a final issue, that kind of wraps everything up. But because it's a, you know, it's a cliffhanger, but oh my God, like I finished reading the first issue and like I wanted the second issue so bad. I almost like sent you an email like, "Hey, do you have the second issue?" It was like super late at night though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and again, not just your narrative, not just the narrative cliffhanger, but the visual that we get from Chris on that last page was just like, holy shit! Like, man, I can't wait for the next one.
It's a good one. Yeah, you know, I think there's also, it's funny that you bring this up because like I think with cliffhangers too, there's some whole other aspect that goes into creating a fantastic cliffhanger in a comic, and that is how much is out about the story
Mm-hmm.
and how much people know going into it. And so, like Kill All Immortals, I think has a great cliffhanger if you haven't read anything about the series going into it. But if you've read a lot of promo or even the solicit and stuff, then you get to that last page, you kind of already know some of it. And so with Dark Empty Void, I think that we've been pretty good and managed what's out there. And so I don't think people kind of truly understand. And so when you get to the last page, you kind of really understand a bit more about what's going on there. Yeah, it's a very exciting cliffhanger to want to keep going. So that I'm glad to hear that it's a good one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely nailed it. So again, everybody, Dark Empty Void issue number 1 out in comic shops this week. You're listening to this later. I'll say September 11th in comic shops. So if it's past the 11th, you should be able to go and pick it up. You should be able to reorder it. And don't forget to tell your local comic shop to pre-order you the rest of the series. Is it 4 issues? Is that right, Zach? 4 issues?
Five issues. And this one's really, I mean, you talk about one cliffhangers. I'd say every issue is going to leave you wanting more. It's a pretty pulpy twist and turn sort of series. So if you pick up the first one and you like it, just subscribe to the series, man. You're going to love it.
Yeah, you again, if it's one of these where you want to be along for the ride, you're not going to want to miss an issue. And what typically happens, I can speak because I've followed Zach's work for so long. Typically, what happens is word of mouth, and then all of a sudden, there's not enough, copies, or whatever. So yeah, pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. That's what I'll say. So we mentioned the other series where you have the trade coming out, which was from Vault, which is Beyond Real, which is a real trip to read, and maybe the most dense thing that you've done for me, where I spent so much time thinking about it. So give everybody the elevator pitch. Let them know what Beyond Real is about.
Yeah, Beyond Real is an exploration of what if we're living in a simulation, but instead of living in a matrix simulation, we're living in an artistic simulation. After all, whenever human beings create something, it is artistic. So why wouldn't the very simulation of life be artistic? And the story follows a young artist. She's in an accident, and she develops the ability to travel through the different layers of the simulation, and circumstances give her reason to do so. And she's on a quest to find the center of the simulation. And as she goes, each layer is drawn by a completely different artist. We have 7 different artists drawing on this series. And so in addition to be this very surreal, trippy sci-fi adventure to the center of the simulation to find out, what is there, it's also a love letter to artists and creatives and what it means to be a creative person. And this character, as she's going on this journey, is kind of struggling with her own identity as an artist and a creative person. She starts out very much lost as a creative person, and then she's faced with all sorts of trials along the way. And it's just, I'm so proud of this book. It's probably my most ambitious book to ever put together and produce with Vault Comics. And it just has so much love in every single page. Every artist that took on pages in this book just poured their heart into it. And it's really, I think it's really powerful. And I'm really excited for people to read it and immerse themselves in it. And I think it's a compliment to say that it's dense, because I think it is very thoughtful, and I think there are pages and moments where you could just stop and look at them and experience them. And I don't think that it's dense in the sense that it will be hard to get through. I think it will give you a moment where you can't help but pause and reflect on the story and on what's going on. It was definitely meant to be extremely thoughtful and provocative, and that's what we got back when we heard readers talk about reading it issue to issue. But what's really exciting is now it's fully collected, and I think that being able to see the different art styles shift just from page to page, from start to finish, and seeing these characters interpreted throughout the whole thing, it's just going to be really special. So I'm really excited for this to be on the shelves and for everybody to have the chance to pick it up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The use of color, visually, the use of color here is what really sells this artwork and gives a sense of the psychedelia and this journey that June is on with the 2 people that she kind of meets in this, other plane of existence, if you will. Dawn and Rishi were kind of, she gets to play off them. They have a little bit of things that they have similar to June. They have things that are different, where there's some contrast there. But yeah, as you're reading it, as you follow June on this journey, again, there's so many points of relatability, that, like you said, that I had to, when I was reading, I had to stop, and I'm not only am I putting myself in her shoes and thinking, what would I do in this situation, but also the self-doubt, right? And maybe this isn't everybody. I know there's people out there that just exude confidence, but you always wonder behind closed doors if they don't have self-doubt. I think it's part of the human condition, right? And you mentioned, right from the start here, June is somebody who questions kind of reality, if you will. She's the one that's talking to her boyfriend at the beginning, Eli, and wondering, what it means to exist. but she does have some self doubt, almost to the point where you'd say self sabotage at times. And I think there's a
Yeah.
relatability there, and it's great to see her on her journey as she kind of confronts that. I don't want to say shortcoming, confronts that challenge repeatedly and comes at it from different angles.
Yeah, that's right. I think it can be a self-sabotage. We do it to ourselves. I think every creative person, and I think every person is actually, I think every person is creative. I mean, I think everybody at one moment in their life plays with creativity and creation. And so we all know what that's like, even if it was back when we were a kid and then you give it up. We all know what it is to try to create and to doubt ourselves. And it's a very human thing. And so I think it's really relatable and yeah, it's really engaging to watch June turn the lens on herself and confront it and kind of try to cope with this challenge. And it's really hard. It's really hard to deal with those types of feelings and emotions. And it's hard sometimes to watch, and it's hard to kind of to get through as just a human being. So yeah, it was really, again, meaningful to kind of explore that journey. I mean, obviously, I have never had any doubt in my life. Yeah, every creative has doubt at every twist and turn, you know, and sometimes it's a moment of doubt, and sometimes it's a month of doubt, and we all go through that experience, and sometimes it's calmed to just nerves, you know, and sometimes it's exacerbated to full blown, you know, paranoia. We all deal with it at different levels and stages. And again, that's, you know, why Beyond Real is a love letter to artists and creatives and anybody who kind of has experienced that or can relate to it. And yeah, can't wait
Yeah,
for you.
definitely recommend you guys go out there, pick it up. Again, like Zach said, you can get it, all collected here and read it in one sitting, and you're gonna have a wonderful experience. Highly recommend it. And you and I, we talked about this while you were going through it, and you mentioned to me that it's kind of the most work you've ever had to do on a project, partly because different artists, different artistic styles, and what have you. But I don't think I've ever asked you this. When you set out to actually sit down and write the script, having an idea of what who was going to be drawing, what sequences and what have you, was it similar to other projects you've done, or was it different because you were trying to
Oh
think,
no.
this is a different artist, so I'm going to kind of try to tailor it? Because again, it's so complicated to do that. So was the outline more extensive than usual? Give us a little behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, first off, I had to figure out what the different layers were, and I had to connect them emotionally to the thematic journey that she's going through as an artist, because each layer that she goes through acts as a sort of mirror to a different question or experience that we have as creatives, whether it's trying to find the structure of our creativity, to trying to find our style and our place, to trying to find our own voice, well, to trying to find our place in business and commerce and how we handle that. Like every layer had to have a multiple sort of design so that it acted in one hand to the A story of her trying to get to the center, and then it acted on a whole different layer to her artistic experience. And so, yeah, I was crafting each layer very thoughtfully about what it had to represent and what kind of visual aesthetic it had to be. And then the whole premise is that not only do we have 7 artists on this, we have 7 distinct artists on this. And I'll take a moment to name them. There's so many amazing. I mean, they're all amazing. Fabiana Mescolo, Tony Fajula, Vincenzo Riccardi, Dennis Menhir, Jorge Corona, Liana Kangas, and Luana Vecchio, and then Jordi Belair on some of the colors, and Matea Ayakana on some of the other colors, and then Hassan Asmanaho just won the Eisner. Letters the whole freaking thing in 7 different styles, which is absolutely mind-boggling, amazing. And if this book did not contribute to that Eisner, it's indicative of why he won the Eisner. And so, yeah, there's so many very distinct artists, and I feel like there are not many artists who could draw each section besides these artists, if any others. When you say nature is going to come to life in one of these layers, and each moment is going to be fluid, and you're going to feel like every line is constantly moving. And then you see Vincenzo Riccardi's work here. There are not many other artists that could do this. And so it made the process of putting this book together, of casting this book, really hard, and it took us a very long time. It took us a very long time to make this book and to cast it all, because we were really being particular about finding the perfect voices for each one of these sections, and could not be prouder of, of the team of artists that we assembled on this. But it was a lot of work from me to figure out how each section layer was going to look. It was really hard to collaborate with Vault to kind of find those artists, and then to have them all be constantly communicating, because the characters are going from layer to layer, so each artist needs to see what the other artists are doing. And there are even some moments where the characters in the story will be looking ahead to a world that is to come. And so you have to have one artist drawing the next artist's world, and then the next artist is maybe drawing backwards. So like there was all this kind of cross back and forth logistically to make sure that all the artists were in sync. And so yeah, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this one, but it came out beautifully, and the artwork is just incredible, just incredible.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me when I was reading it, all these different styles, really, it would have been really easy for at some point one artist or another to kind of lose sight of those three main characters, June and her two friends, Rishi and Dawn, to where you had a little bit of inconsistency in their look. That was a thing that blew me away. I mean, the whole thing visually is just a treat, especially the colors from Jordi Belair. But that was one of the things, from a technical standpoint, that really impressed me. I was like, man, the characters are always recognizable as who they are, and there's a consistency from artist to artist with just the way they look, body language, everything. That was really interesting to me, because that's not easy to do with this number of artists as they're going on this kind of psychedelic
I think
journey.
it was twofold. I mean, on the one hand, it was definitely a collaboration with myself and editorial to make sure that each artist that came along saw everything else that was happening, so that they could understand how to interpret these characters in their own style, but true to the overall synergy of each character. So each character felt like it was that same character, just coming through a different reflection, a different lens. But I think also what was really great is we found 7 artists and 2 colorists who took this really seriously, who really came on board and understood the level that this book was bringing it in terms of the art, and they saw what everyone else was doing, and everyone was like rolling up their sleeves and like, okay, hold my beer sort of thing. Like they're like, okay, let's go. Like, this is a love letter art. Every page needs to be amazing. It needs to blow people away, and every section is blowing people away. So I'm going to blow people away too. So it was really, as a writer and a creator, to watch all of these artists come and bring their absolute best, and then transcend their best and really go at it, was just amazing. It was everything I wanted for the series. I truly wanted, I think in a way, I started making comics 8 years ago, and I've come to appreciate artists so much more than I ever did, and I really wanted this book to show off a number of these 7 artists' amazing work, and just show the range of comic art and how amazing comic art can be, and how different it can be, and how spectacular it is. And so it was really my goal, and it's just been really amazing to see it all come together.
Yeah, I mean, every one of them knocked it out of the park. I imagine, seeing, because they were seeing, the other artists' work so often, they're like, oh man, I gotta up my game. I don't want to be the weak link here.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
That led to 7 amazing sections. So yeah.
yeah, it was awesome. In terms of the story, again, we're not going to give anything away or too much away here, everybody, because we want you to check it out for yourself. There's a lot of questions here that get raised. We talked about the whole idea of self-doubt and self-sabotage and that sort of thing. And it is, a very sort of abstract idea here with her being outside of reality and is it a simulation and that sort of thing. But what I love about it, as so often these types of stories do, it's not this clean ending where you know what's real and what's not and all the questions have answers and everything's cut and dry. Because I think if you had done that, and you can kind of speak to this if this influenced the way you wrote the ending, because I think if you do that, if you just give people the answers, then it's like, okay, well now I went on this journey with June, and she was having questions, and I was asking those questions of myself. How would I relate? What would I do in that situation? Or reflecting it back on my own life. But then if you gave me all the answers at the end, then I close the book and the journey's over, and that's it. As opposed to leaving some of these things open-ended where, weeks from now, I've finished reading it, but I'm still asking myself those questions, still kind
Yeah.
of looking for the answers.
I would say that I don't. Here's the thing I would dispute. I would say I don't think this is an open-ended ending. What I would say is I think it's a subjective ending, and it's
Okay.
got a level of subjectivity. And I think there's a difference because I think when you have an open ending, you literally don't know what happened at the end. The guy's going into the room and the door closes, and you don't know if he's getting fired or not. It's
Yeah.
not subjective. It's you don't know how it's going to end, and then we're out, and you're left to discuss what you think it should have been. Here we have an ending, but the whole premise of this book is about perception. Again, I love exploring perception and how we perceive things and how you perceive reality. And so this book is artistic. It's kind of and so in that way, you get to view this work of art and you get to decide subjectively how it ended. There is an ending to it, but it is interpretive in some ways. And but I think at the end of the day, it's still a very Wizard of Oz sort of story, and we come back to Kansas at the very end of the whole thing, and then you're just left to kind of answer, subjectively, well, what do you think about a couple of things? And I'm very curious to hear what everyone thinks about them because I love to uh, read things that make me think and make me want to discuss them, and so I love to write those kinds of stories as well. So I hope that a lot of people, when they're done with this, they feel that appetite to reach out to other people and say, I had this experience. What was your experience? And connect on it.
Yeah, I would say that's 100% accurate because different people could interpret it different ways. I mean, it's the whole idea, right? What was the show back in the day, Dallas, right, where so and so got killed or whatever, but then they walked it back because it got bad ratings or whatever, and the whole
Right.
season was a dream. You gotta wonder: is this the whole journey? Was this a dream that June had? Did it really happen? So yeah, there's so many questions you can ask yourself. Here's the thing about it, though, right? Like whether it was in her mind, whether it actually happened, that's not the point. It's an interesting aspect of the story, and there's other questions that it raises. But whether it happened in her mind or whether she actually physically experienced this over an extended period of time, we're told months, um, it doesn't make the questions that she asks herself or the self doubt or how we relate to it, it doesn't make it any less impactful or any less meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, there are some clues that something happened.
Oh, yeah.
She went on this experience. She went on this journey. She didn't, this was not imagined. It was just, we're not sure how to, you come in and get to interpret some of the aspects of how it
Yeah.
happened. But yeah, I mean, it's a soulful experience for sure. And I just think that's the best. I don't want to give too much away about the ending, but I will say this, another thing that was really fascinating to explore here, and again, this is a very interpretive question from the beginning because we gets back to simulation theory. So if we're living in a simulation, then that means that it's all predetermined, right? Everything that's happening is coded to happen. Simulations are coded. Uh, I mean, I guess there could be a simulation where you're waiting to see how things unfold, but the very inherent nature of a simulation is that some things are coded and predetermined, and that we are, when we code a simulation, when human beings code a simulation, the non-player characters, the NPCs, are coded to do things. And so are we living a predetermined life and then just pretending that we have free will? What kind of path are we on? How could you say that people who create and who just randomly come up with this stuff are predetermined? Isn't art and creativity like completely spontaneous? I mean, sometimes we even, flame paint. And so I just think it's a really fascinating exploration about the nature of life and how we perceive it and how that perception kind of affects our journey on it. And so that's an interpretive kind of conversation that the book has as well. So that just implies this kind of you have to come at it and kind of say to the reader, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and that's where, as a reader, I'm bringing my value or my beliefs to it, right? Because yeah, if we are in a simulation, I don't know if everybody out there knows this, but if you're talking about a computer, right, binary language, ones and zeros, there's not a lot of room for what we would consider creativity, right? It's a one or it's a zero. It's a true or a false. That's it. So if this is a simulation and everything is predetermined, there is actually no such thing as a random number. Computers can't actually I know you can go to a website, whatever, random number generator. That's not actually random. It's an algorithm. It's not actually random. On a long enough time period, again, I work IT for my day job, so this is something I'm knowledgeable about. On a long enough timeline, you could predict what each number is going to be on a long enough timeline. Because, again, it follows an algorithm. There's a pattern. The pattern might be so big, and it might last 1,000 years, so it's too long of a timeline for one person to be able to figure it out. But there is no true randomness if you're talking about something generated by a computer. So this idea that we could be living in a simulation and there actually is nothing that's random, like to use your word, that is fascinating to me. That is,
and even if you take the computer component out of it, all biology is coded. I mean,
yeah,
microscope. I mean, atomic particles are either positive or negative predominantly. I mean, when we get to the quantum level, there's all sorts of quirky things that happen. But for the most part, the Earth spins. Gravity pulls things down. There are certain rules and forces in our existence that are binary and finite. And yet here we are walking around. We're a collection of atoms and a collection of cells, and we act as if we have total free will to do whatever we're going to do. It's like, well, when you get small enough, everything about us is pretty programmed and pretty coded. But I'm still on the fence. I'm still not convinced. I still think that there is something subjective about life, and there's some component of free will, but then there's some predetermination, and it's a really interesting conversation, and I'm really excited to use this book to provoke that with other people and to ask other people, hey, scientists are talking about simulations. Let's get off the computer component of it. Let's just talk life. What do you think? Here's a sci-fi adventure that's going to thrill you. That's going to amaze you visually and make you wonder yourself if life is coded or not.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all coded in terms of us, right? Like the building blocks that we're made out of, like you mentioned, atoms. We can go a little larger and say DNA, right? Like everybody's made out of the same, few DNA
Yeah.
building blocks, and they're just arranged in different ways, and that's how you get some, variety and diversity or what have you. But if you want to start talking about the differences, now we're talking about consciousness, or what some people might call the soul, or spiritual, your spirit, or whatever. And that's where the true real mystery lies, because in terms of scientifically understanding consciousness, that is something that we still, sentience and consciousness, it's why we don't have true AI. Like, I know that word gets thrown around, that term gets thrown around a lot right now. Oh, AI. We don't have AI. There's no machines out there that can think for themselves. It's all just machine learning and aggregation and regurgitation of and amalgamation of things.
No, there's no sentiency.
Yeah, exactly. So
AI computers are not sentient. They're not thinking.
Exactly. So it's not true intelligence, not like you and I have, not consciousness, not self-awareness, and that sort of thing. That's where it gets scary, right? That's Skynet stuff where you have to worry about it. But again, these are really interesting and fascinating conversations to have because as much as we know about our existence and our world and what have you, we still there's still mysteries that we haven't solved. What does it mean to truly be sentient? What does it mean to be conscious and self-aware? We can't replicate those things. There's something there. It's that spark that you know love and creativity and the mystery of life, if you will. It still exists, and books like Beyond Real bring that to the forefront and start a conversation. And I think that's why it's so valuable to have books like this. And I think you and the creative team did a fantastic job. And that's what we were talking about before, everybody, with this idea of when we say dense, it is what Zach said. It is thoughtful. It doesn't mean it's inscrutable or hard to understand or what have you. It's actually easy to read, but it's going to get you thinking.
Yeah, don't read this book if you don't like to think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Don't go, oh man, I didn't want to think. Well, yeah, this is a thoughtful book, but it's beautiful, so beautiful, and the artist there, that cover on the screen there is John Pearson, who I did Mindset with, and John did all our covers, and this one's a special one. But the whole book is just a beautiful. I mean, I'm completely biased, but I kind of feel like this is one of the most beautiful comics or graphic novels of the year because it's just so distinct, and there's so many amazing artists on this doing such different things. And so, yeah, really, really excited for everyone to check this out.
Yeah, and as much as it will make you think, everybody, there is that surface layer with the gorgeous art and just the adventurous journey that June goes on. So I suppose if you don't want to think too much, you probably could still
Oh
pick it
yeah,
up
there's
and
still a
yeah,
great adventure, and yeah, it's
exactly.
still very Wizard of Oz in terms of
Yeah.
like, are they going to get to the center? And there's all sorts of challenges that they overcome. So it's definitely an adventure component too, which is a lot of fun to see come to life.
Yeah, so don't say I don't I think too much of my job or whatever, and I just want to have some escapism when I pick up the comic. This is actually a great comic to escape with because of
Yeah.
the visuals and this fantastical world that June and Rishi and Dawn go through. So don't think it's homework. it
No,
is
no,
uh,
no. The test at the end, yeah.
yeah, it is an enjoyable book. So, anyway, it was great to catch up with you, Zach. Remember, everybody, both these books are out on September 11th in your comic shops for Dark Empty Void. Again, make sure you tell your retailer you're going to want the whole series so they can make sure to have copies for you and what have you. But Zach, what do you have coming up? Anything you can tease that you're working on? I know you got a lot of stuff in the hopper, but may not be able to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, my Dark Horse series, Kill All Immortals, which is about immortal Vikings living present day, and it's very much a Secession meets John Wick action series. It's been an absolute banger for us, and we come out with issue 3 just next week. So if you haven't gotten on that one already, that one is just a really exciting series with Figo Asio and Tiago Rocha, and Hassan as well on that. And then I have another Dark Horse full contained graphic novel that comes out on the week of October 2nd, 3rd there, and it is a tie-in with one of the largest synthwave bands in the world, The Midnight, but it's a sci-fi adventure. It's an original story. It's very Tron-esque. It's about nostalgia. It's about escaping from our everyday lives and kind of facing adulthood, and it is a beautiful, stunning book. I cannot wait for everyone, if you're a fan of the Midnight or you've never heard of them and you just like my work, that's called The Midnight Shadows. It comes out fully contained as a graphic novel from Dark Horse Comics at the top of October. And then, yeah, I'm busy making lots more comics for next year, and I cannot wait to bring them to everybody then. But 4 books out now, so that'll keep everybody occupied for a while.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And remind everybody where they can find you online if they have questions or want to follow your work.
Yeah, I'm online everywhere at Zack Caps, and I got a website, www.zackkaplan.com, where you can find all my books. And yeah, let me know what you think of the books.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to the website and Zach's social media in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding him, you can go there. One last question, Zach. I am curious. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you've ever released something without doing single issues. So this upcoming Dark Horse with releasing as a graphic novel, is this the first time that you've had something self-contained? Was it a different writing experience?
It is. It is. It was once my first time writing a fully contained graphic novel, but no, I kind of approached it the same way in terms of creating 5 chapters. That I mean, the rules are out when you do a graphic novel, but I kind of stayed to creating 5 equally proportioned chapters that each have exciting chapter breaks that are cliffhanger-esque and that fulfill the story as a whole as any other. I think I've gotten used to thinking of uh, how a story works both on a monthly or chapter basis versus miniseries. So even though it was my first time doing it, I didn't really approach the storytelling any differently. But what's different is unlike monthly series where someone gets a taste of something like Dark Empty Void and then I have to wait to hear what they think of the next one and the next one. That first week of October, everyone will get to pick up this full experience of the Midnight Shadows, and then I'll get to hear what everybody thought of the entire experience. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, cool. Sounds great. Well, again, great to catch up, Zach. Always good to chat with you.
Always good, buddy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to all you out there in the audience, whether you're joining us on our audio-only feed or on YouTube, we appreciate you taking the time as always, and we will talk to you next time.